Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. And by the Mac Voices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter to stay up to date on all the Mac Voices news. Subscribe from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is a talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, Sierra is officially out now, and it's time that you learn what it can do for you. A little while ago, we had Joe Kissel on to help you get upgraded to Sierra properly without any danger or any problem. This time, though, we have Scholle McFarland here to talk to us about Sierra. I keep wanting to insert things. Sierra, a Take Control crash course. Scholle, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming back. It's been way too long.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
We have trouble getting our schedules together, but at least we can get here for the really important ones.
That's right.
and Sierra, a Take Control crash course is a pretty important thing.
Yes, indeed. And we already have a version out. We had a early version of the book out last week, so it's up. It's there. And what we did is we covered all of the new features in the first edition of the book. And then this week, I've finished up the last chapters, which are some of the more like mastering features that people maybe overlook, like the menu bar and the Finder Windows sidebar, things like that. Those chapters all roll in by the end of this week. So if you buy the book, it updates very quickly. So it's already out there for anybody who's burning to find out how to use Sierra right now.
And of course, this usually is said at the end, but we'll say at the beginning, if you already bought the book or the limited edition, it automatically upgrades, no upgrade cost or anything else. So,
yeah, that's right. The beauty of ebooks right there.
Absolutely. No paper, just automatic updates.
Yep.
Gotta love it. So Sierra is there's a lot to talk about here. I've been reading all the articles that are going across the internet, flying around, tips and tricks and things, and there's nothing really organized. How did you approach the crash course for Sierra? Did you break it into any particular logical areas, or is it just sort of what you think are the most important things?
Well, we have an organization that we've used for the past two crash courses on the macOS for Yosemite and El Capitan. And basically, we start with features that are part of the core Mac experience. For instance, Siri. That's not really a separate thing. It's really part of your Mac. And then we work our way out to the Apple apps. And then at the end, we do things that are kind of a little bit on the geekier side. We have troubleshooting advice. We have advice also for using some of the continuity features. That was kind of the buzz term when Yosemite came out. They don't say continuity as much anymore, but these are the features that link your different devices together, so you can go from Apple device to Apple device easily. So that's how we usually put it together.
Okay, so each iteration of now macOS,
right.
We're trying
no more OS 10.
Yep, trying to learn the new terminologies. Each iteration sort of has, I think, distinctive features or something that identifies them as Yosemite or El Cap and now Sierra. What did you find to be the most distinctive features of Sierra?
When I started writing the book, I really wasn't sure. It seemed like maybe this was not as profound of an update, especially when compared to Yosemite, which was such a big seismic shift in the macOS. But after I had started using the features, I realized what was really distinctive about this macOS version is that it's taking the unification between the Apple devices to the next step. Yosemite started it with handoff so that you could start one thing on your iPhone and then move right over to your Mac and finish it like an email. And also so that you can make iPhone calls on your Mac. These are like really cool features that we got a few versions back. But now Sierra takes it another step. And when it really came to me was when I was writing about the new feature that lets you put your desktop and your documents folders in iCloud. This is something that the Tidbits folks, the people who publish this book, were really concerned about, because in the past, a lot of Apple's syncing features have had some problems, which if you ever suddenly ended up with 10 of the same calendar events or 5 of the same contacts. So it's one thing when it's an annoyance when it's contacts or when it's calendar events, but when we're talking about your actual files, that made them really nervous. So I approached this feature with caution, but I actually found that I really liked it. And the reason is, about 5 years ago, I had a catastrophic hard drive crash. And even though I had edited 1 million articles about backups, I didn't have a current backup.
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. It's just, I can't help it.
It's happened. Let's just be real here. This is what everybody happens, and then they just admit it, sadly, after the fact. But a lot of people just don't back up. And I didn't have the kind of redundant backups that could save my butt when it came down to it. So that was such a terrible experience that I moved all of my files into Dropbox. And that's an online service where you can keep files and then they sync between your different Macs. And I love Dropbox, and it totally changed the way I was able to use my computers. So this feature in the macOS really tries to bring that kind of experience natively to the Mac. And what I discovered was it made the experience be like I didn't have 2 Macs. I have this Mac I'm staring at. I have another one beside me. I have an iPhone. I have 3 iPads. I have all these Apple devices. Instead of having devices that were separate from one another, once I started putting my desktop and my documents in the cloud, it was almost like I had one Mac, like with a capital O and a capital M, that then I could access from any device. It's almost like, if you want to go way back, like a terminal experience where there's the big computer and you access it from any different terminal, wherever that terminal may be. This is really convenient if you move between devices, which I think a lot of people do now. Like, you don't have to worry, did I forget that spreadsheet I was supposed to look at over the weekend? Or nothing like that will happen anymore, because you can always get to it through iCloud Drive on any of your Apple devices that are set up with the same Apple ID. So that, I think, is really pretty profound. And that's not even the only feature. There's also being able to automatically unlock your Mac with the watch, which is like one of those tiny features, but has high coolness factor, like just being able to like raise your wrist and then ta-da, your Mac is unlocked. It's really neat. And it also gives you another reason to have that phone, like that there's something, they interact together, like they work together. Also, universal copy and paste, which is one of the new features. This is it's kind of a strange little feature, but basically what it means is anything that you're looking at on your phone, say, any kind of text or image, you're supposed to be able to do video, but I actually have not successfully made that happen yet. So I'll put an editorial comment there. But you can just copy, like Command-C, your normal copy command, and then move over to another device that's logged in to iCloud with the same Apple ID, and then you just paste. It's so easy that it, again, has this new feeling of your devices really being like one device and all working together. So these little features, some of them bigger than the others, add up to a new experience of really feeling like the Apple universe is a universe and that you can move seamlessly between devices. Another thing that I haven't even mentioned is the using Apple Pay on the Mac to shop. This is not a feature I've really used that much, but I was on another podcast and I asked people, what are your favorite Sierra features? And I was really surprised that actually almost all of the other participants said Apple Pay on the Mac was like this awesome thing for them. And that's kind of a cool feature too, in that it brings the devices together. You can shop using Apple Pay in Safari on your Mac, But then you actually verify your identity by using Touch ID on your phone or by double pressing the button on your watch. So again, it's assuming that you are part of the Apple universe and making everything work together. I think that is really the distinctive thing about Sierra, is these features that are continuing to tie everything together.
I think it's very interesting to hear you talk about that. There was so much concern, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, about the macOS and iOS coming together, the iOSification of the Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And that there were a few things that kind of were put into place that made them interlock, but it kind of stopped. I mean, it only went so far. And there's a lot of question as to whether that was by design or whether somebody changed directions, or whether that was part of the original grand design. But now all of a sudden we have, I love your term, the Apple universe, because I think that's what it is, that they are making it so that things work, they integrate a lot more, but the individual devices retain their strengths.
Mm-hmm. And that you have a reason to have more than one, too. I mean, obviously, from a marketing perspective, that's a great idea. But from a user's perspective, that having that watch on your arm makes it more convenient to use your Mac is cool. Like that's something I wouldn't have thought of necessarily, to have those devices interact that way. And I really like that kind of creativity with figuring out how they can bring their strengths together.
I want to spend just a second on the idea of putting my desktop and my documents folder in iCloud. You're right. You know that you have played with this a lot. I have not played with it at all yet. But yeah, there is a bit of trepidation going on there. No question about it.
Sure.
How did you find it? And I'm particularly interested because I don't know if it's a bad habit or just a habit, of working on a document, say on my iMac, and then going in the living room, picking up my MacBook, and working on the same document there, opening it without closing this one. How does it handle those conflicts? I mean, we all know syncing is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find any issues or conflicted copies stacking up or anything like that?
That is interesting. I did not try that particular thing with the document left open, but that is another thing that needs to be tested. I'll put that down on my list because I'm working on version 1.1 of the book right now.
There you go. The MacVoices test.
That's right, right there.
Yeah, that's because I love the idea, and I'm like you. I don't have all my documents in Dropbox, but I have some key things, and I have found that becomes an issue, that you get these conflicted copies, which is certainly better than losing anything.
Yeah.
So I'm not knocking it. It's just a question of, can a document update itself live if I'm working on it over there, and is it updating live here? And
Dropbox has been around for a while, so it's had a chance to really improve itself. And even so, there are still sometimes some syncing problems where a document doesn't appear in the folder where you thought you put it because your Mac just hasn't synced and seen that change yet, or something like that. The problem that we ran into was kind of dependent on how you use your Mac. For instance, someone was talking about how they do podcasts and they leave those big files on their desktop. Well, if you're putting giant files on your desktop and they're loading, they're going up and down, that might impact your performance. So in that case, maybe it's not that. Either you need to change where you store those files, which some people, maybe that's not worth it. They love putting stuff on their desktop, and that's that. Either you need to change where you're storing it, or maybe that feature is just not for you. But for people working with smaller files, in my experience, I didn't really see hardly any time in the syncing. I would put something on one Mac and come over, like an image, and come over to the other Mac and see if it was there, and there might be a slight delay. So I'm hoping that will improve. But I don't know how many people are walking between one Mac and another, in such a short time. I think probably what's more likely is someone's working on a desktop Mac, then they pick up their laptop and they walk out to somewhere where they're going to use the laptop. And in that case, the syncing you wouldn't notice the syncing happening. But it's an interesting idea.
And there's so many variables to that kind of scenario. I mean, the bandwidth you have to the cloud, it's not just Apple servers, whether they're fast enough, but the bandwidth you have, the size of the file, all those variables that I guess you always have to test for yourself.
And approach with caution, because, I mean, you might end up being like, in my situation, the uploading and downloading is so slow, this is just not going to work. And in that case, you can turn the feature off and go back to normal. It's not difficult. But if it does work for you, it can be really convenient.
It also doesn't come, though, without a cost. When I think about what's in my documents folder, I'm going to have to upgrade my iCloud storage.
Yes, that's true. That is true. Depending on how much storage you use, you are. Now, the other part of that is, though, people who have newer laptops with tiny hard drives. I mean, it's funny to realize that, as desktop Macs hard drives just get more and more gigantic, our laptop drives have been getting smaller and smaller as they move over to different types of media. So if you're in that situation, putting stuff up on the cloud can be helpful because you're not going to run out of space on that Mac with limited space. And of course, that's how it's kind of pitched. All the features are under a managed storage umbrella. They're kind of in a weird place. You actually get to them by going to your Apple menu and then to About This Mac, and then you click on storage. Like, they're down a few layers to get to them. But that's how they pitched all these features. So it's really about saving storage more than about being able to access things on all your devices. But I think the accessing your files everywhere, for me, is the more significant result of this feature.
All right, so clarify this for me. I want to make sure that we represent the folks. I'm used to. No, well, I am, and a lot of people are used to the idea of Dropbox, that I put something in my Dropbox, it syncs up to the cloud, so I have access to it from a web interface if I use it, which I seldom do, and then it syncs back over to my other, let's just say my other Macintosh. But the file is actually on, I'll use my iMac and my MacBook as examples. They're actually there.
Yeah.
They aren't just waiting to be downloaded. Is that what we're seeing here with the optimized storage thing?
Well, they leave it a little vague. It's store all files and photos in iCloud and save space by keeping only recently opened files and optimize photos on this Mac when storage space is needed. So if you actually have plenty of storage space, then you're probably going to have most of your files locally. It's when you start running out of space that then the primary copy is going to be online, and it's going to come down just as soon as you click on that file. They'll sync it. So people are going to have a different experience depending on how full their drive is, because the feature is going to be working a little differently. It's made to deal with those situations when you're running out of space.
Are there any little badges or anything on icons that indicate the status of a given file? Okay. Good.
Actually, when you're in the Finder now, they're in the Finder sidebar. There's a new iCloud section, and if you've done your desktop and your documents to iCloud, they now appear under that header. And when you look, you'll see that cloud symbol that has an arrow pointing down, and that means that's not on your computer. Click that and it'll download. So it's badged if you have it or not. So that means if you know you're going to be offline, you can check before you walk out the door, do I have a local copy of this file? And if not, download it so that you know you'll have it on the airplane when you don't have any connection. But yeah, it's all there. And actually when they're uploading, there's a little progress wheel that appears in the Finder sidebar as well. So you know something's happening.
And you went exactly where I was going, to an airplane.
Yeah.
Nothing. Airplanes are a great place to get work done because you basically are uninterrupted.
Yeah.
and that means it's going to be super frustrating if I have to sign up for the airline's Wi-Fi and try to drag
Which
something
never
down.
works anyway, in my experience.
Yeah,
So.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
It's funny how it always seems to work for the movies, but when it's actually you wanting to do something, it doesn't work. But
Yeah.
then this is conspiracy theory corner. Okay.
Yeah, that's another step people have to take. So you will have, I mean, you get to forget some things, but now you have to remember some new things. So you don't have to remember where did I store that file, because no matter which device you're on, you'll be able to get to it. But now you do have to remember, do I have a local file, before you go offline somewhere, and make sure you've downloaded one if you don't.
Yeah. And listen, this feature's got to be phenomenal for MacBook owners, and MacBook Pro owners and MacBook owners especially, because of the limited space on there.
Yeah.
The last thing, well, not the last thing, because I drag around external drives all the time, but it's not really convenient and certainly not conducive on a plane.
Yes. No, you want to stack up that external drive on top of your person in front of you's seat back.
Oh yeah, that always works well, especially
Make friends.
Especially when it's some little kid that reaches up and yanks the cable out. Yeah. Okay, so when we were chatting pre-interview, one of the things you said is that you have really looked also at the fun parts of Sierra.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing to think about in an operating system. The fun parts. What are the fun parts of Sierra?
Well, I had the most fun writing the Siri chapter. I don't think that's that surprising, just because Siri is known for its fun factor on the iPhone too. But it was a hoot. Like, it was just really funny. Siri can do a lot on the Mac, a lot more than I expected. You can find files and open system preferences and switch system settings all by voice, which is amazingly useful. For instance, you can just say, Siri, turn on Bluetooth, or Siri, what's my serial number? Like, finding your Mac's serial number in the past was a big pain. And now you just have to ask the question, and it goes on in there and it gets it for you just lightning fast. But it doesn't just get it for you. Like, Siri always has a little comment, or, when I was testing all the filing features, it would say something like, Scholle, your filing is so styling. Like, you never knew when something like that would happen. And it was funny, I gotta say. It's funny. I also enjoyed testing all of Siri's jokes, because I did include a list of things you could ask Siri if you wanted to get some of its better jokes. And that was really funny too. Someone has poured a lot of love into this technology, like a lot of love, because the depths of all the weird little things you can ask, or the things she'll say back to you. I was testing the feature, which is a lot like the Spotlight feature that we've had in the past few versions of the macOS, where you can say, Siri, show me good coffee shops that are nearby, something like that. And so I got my list of coffee shops, and then Siri says, Scholle, do you need a snack? Like, it's always got something like that to say. It's amusing. And it's nice to have something like that while you're computing, while you're, like me, I'm in a basement all by myself writing this book right now. And so I appreciate a little computer companionship. But it's not only a fun feature, it really can do some useful things. I was impressed. Being able to say, Siri, turn off Bluetooth, turn on Bluetooth, dim my screen, turn up the volume, like basic things like that, was helpful. Or being able to ask, you can find a file and then modify your request once. So it's not an endless search power, but you can say, find my camp receipts folder. And then you'll get a list, and then you can say just the ones tagged with red. So you can modify your search one more time. And that's pretty useful. And then you click, and then that Finder window will open. So that's kind of neat to be able to do this work with your files through Siri. But the place where the real magic happens is searching your photos using Siri, something which it appears from my testing you can't do any longer with Spotlight. That was something cool that Spotlight was able to do. It looks like that feature has moved completely over to Siri. But photos, as you might know, has all this new image recognition technology, which is part of it. So it can recognize common objects, like a lot of objects. I think they say it's, 4,100 or something like that objects, from teapots to oak trees. I mean, it's really crazy. So now you can say to Siri, Siri, show me pictures of oaks, and it will go through your entire photos library and then show all the pictures that you've taken. For me, it's, over the past 10 years or whatever, that include oak trees, and it can tell what the oak trees are. It really is kind of magical. So you can do that in so many ways. You can say something basic like, show me photos from Monday, but you can also say, show me pictures of babies, and it will go through your whole library. Photos opens, and there's your search with all the pictures that you've taken of babies. It's a cool way to interact with your photos and be able to find stuff you might not even realize you have. It goes to the detail of, I have a collie, just like Lassie, and I can say, show me pictures of collies. Like, it knows dog breed types, which kind of blows my mind. And the funny thing is actually, there she is. There are pictures of my collie. But if you say, show me pictures of dogs, which I did with my friend Jason Snell, he's writing a Take Control crash course on photos. So we did this together through messages. When he did show me pictures of dogs, not only was it pictures of dogs, but a few hot dogs appeared as well, because Siri knows that both those things can be referred to in that way. It's really cool. Like, that was really fun. And I mean, I can't even tell you all the different things you can do. You can say, show me pictures of water, and all of my beach photos and photos from when we were at lakes, they all appear. It's a really cool way to be able to interact with your photos, especially if you're someone like me who now has a gigantic library of photos. You can discover things in a new way, and it's really fun, and a great way to say you're putting together an end of year photo album, which I used to do for all our relatives. What a great way to be able to say, show me birthday parties, and those all come up. So that, I think, using Siri and discovering all the different things it could do like this was one of the most fun parts of trying out this new system. It's just got all sorts of depths to the things you can do with it that can be surprising and be fun.
On the photos, again, I want to be real clear so we set people's expectations. You aren't one of those crazy people that goes through and tags photos.
There's no tagging.
There's no tagging.
It's they call it, it's got an acronym. It's Advanced Computer Recognition. This is like machine learning image recognition. So it is, here, I'll find the name for you. It is an incredible new feature that Photos has. And really, this is just Siri tapping into it. So yeah, it's called Advanced Computer Vision, and it recognizes 4,432 things, according to Apple. Now, they say it's supposed to recognize things like facial expressions. That did not work in my testing. So maybe that's something that's coming a little later. But it did work with types of trees, plants. I could say, show me pictures of roses, and all the pictures of roses appeared. None of this involved any effort on my part. No tagging, nothing. It's just the tool working using its own machine magical abilities. It's cool. It's really cool.
It sounds like it. I mean, again, I have not upgraded to Sierra yet because there are just a couple mission critical apps that are not ready yet. Yeah. So on my production environment and where I spend most of my time, I have not had a chance to install it. So now you've whetted my appetite. Now I'm anxious to get to playing with some of this stuff because
it's fun to play with.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds science fiction, but at the same time, a lot of the things we already are used to in the last 5-10 years were in science fiction before that, and now they're just commonplace. So, any thoughts on how the voice interface is going to work in, say, crowded environments, more family-oriented environments, not in your basement, but where there are a lot of people around. You think that's going to present an issue, or is it going to be just become sort of the norm?
Siri is really good at picking out your voice. I actually, in the book, there's a tip about how to actually set something up so that you can say, "Hey Siri," and it will launch just like it does with your iPhone. That's not something built in, but you can set it up pretty easily. I did eventually have to turn that feature off because it was hearing me or hearing my kids coming over, and they said something that sounded like "Hey," and it would open and things would start to happen, and that was not cool. I think the most significant thing is not going to be whether it works or not, but how embarrassed people will be. Because I don't know if I was in a cubicle with people all around me, if I would want to be talking to Siri, even it was just like, "Siri, show me the nearest comic book store." Like, do I want all my coworkers to know that that's what I'm thinking about right then?
Yeah, fair point.
I think in that case, people will still be using Spotlight for lots of things, just because they don't want to broadcast what it is that they're searching or in a public environment. Same thing in a cafe. Like, I don't know if I'd want to sit there and talk to Siri in a cafe with people all around me. But for those times, there's still Spotlight, and although Spotlight appears to not be able to search photos anymore, it can still do all the other things that it has been able to do. Look for movies, get sports scores, do basic natural language file searches. All that you can still do through Spotlight. So when you need to be quiet, Spotlight is still there for you.
I'm so glad you mentioned the voice recognition thing, because the last thing I want to do is be working on something at the office and then have some clown come by and say, "Hey Siri, delete this document." Whoops. No. Whoops. Sorry about that.
There you go.
Yes. Yeah, that's very, very good. That would not be very good, and that there are going to be people that are going to think it's funny to do that, and so you want to try to protect yourself.
It's true.
Happily, we have undos.
Yes, we do.
So was Siri the primary fun thing, or were there other fun things in there?
Well, I loved using Siri, and I loved asking Siri jokes and all that sort of stuff, and trying out these photos features. There are a lot of little features in Sierra which maybe are, I don't know, fun is exactly the right word, but they are great and they're enjoyable to use. Of course, there's picture-in-picture, which we already had on the iPad as of iOS 9. Now that's on your Mac in Sierra. And that's it's a really handy feature. When I started the book, it was the Olympics season. So I wanted to be able to watch Olympics videos. And I couldn't get the live stream because it was Flash, and that doesn't work with picture-in-picture. But I could go on YouTube and I could get highlights and I could play those, which in fact, there also is a tip in the book for how do you watch YouTube videos with picture-in-picture, because you actually have to know a trick to make it work. I'll tell you the trick. The trick is there's picture-in-picture in iTunes and in supported websites when you're in Safari. There's actually a little icon on the controls. But when you go to YouTube, it's not there. But if you control click or right click, whichever you do, twice on the video, the first time you'll get this unrelated contextual menu. The second time, you'll get the contextual menu that says enter picture-in-picture. So you actually can watch YouTube videos using picture-in-picture. It's just not as obvious as you would think it would be. I'm sure eventually it will be, because that seems like a kind of a large oversight, as YouTube has a lot of video on it.
Is it an oversight, or is it something that has to be done on YouTube's part too?
YouTube needs to do it. They need to support it.
Yeah.
So, but as it is, it's possible to do. So it's really handy. It's a great thing. Even when you go into full screen or split view, your picture-in-picture window stays floating in one of the corners of your desktop, so you can keep watching it no matter what you're doing, which is really handy. That's a really just handy feature. What are some of the other handy features that we've got? Well, I'll tell you one thing that people may or may not like is there's new text, what would you call them? They're text shortcuts. So it's a lot like what you have on your iPhone when your iPhone autocorrects you, for better or for worse. There is an autocorrect option, but there also are some other options. It will capitalize words automatically. If you forget to capitalize I, it will go back and fix it for you. And it also adds a period if you type a double space, which no one should be doing anymore. End of a sentence.
Amen.
This will break you of that habit.
Amen.
If you type a double space, it will automatically put a space and a period for you. So
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Apple. Thank you for all those people that still insist I need two spaces. Oh, shall we? I have to interrupt. All right, we won't tell anybody, just us. But can you turn the autocorrect and those features off?
Yes, you can.
Okay, all right. Well,
yes,
darn.
you can. So actually, that's one of the reasons it's good to know about them, because if they start to bug you, you can easily turn them off.
Okay.
So
some of the substitution stuff, like with the iPhone, it gets sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not. It gets irritating.
Yes.
But so I wondered. You had to be able to turn it off, but I had to ask.
Definitely. Messages also has some new features. It is a pale shadow of what you get on iOS 10. So at first I was pretty excited about the features, but then I put the iOS 10 beta on my phone and I was like, aw, because on iOS 10 you get a lot of new messages features. On Sierra, you can see some of the things from an iOS 10 device, like invisible ink. Have you seen all these cool new messages features?
Yeah.
So it's like there's like a little pattern like this, and then the word just sort of slowly appears. You can see some things like that, but and you do emoji. Like if you do an emoji on its own line, it becomes extra big for extra big feelings. You can preview links and play videos and messages, which is really handy. You can tap back, which is basically like giving your thumbs up, like as if you were on Facebook. You can give a thumbs up on somebody's thing that they just said, you can put a heart or a thumbs up or a thumbs down or ha. Like there's a few little standard common things that you can just tag onto something someone said. But unfortunately, although you can see some of the new effects that are available on iOS 10, a lot of them you can't. So if someone sends you a message with fireworks, which on the phone you would see like fireworks, on your Mac it says sent with fireworks, like just text. It's a little anticlimactic.
That'll be fixed sooner or later. No, not much question about that.
I assume they'll give a little love to the Mac users out there, for goodness sake. But yeah, those are some of the fun little things. There's always a lot of great little things. I guess some of the other notable features, Notes, which was significantly updated in the past few versions of the operating system as something that you could take notes and share them among all your devices that were hooked up to the same Apple ID. Now you can actually share notes with other people, which is really handy. So that could be as basic as, say you want to make a grocery list and you want everybody to have it and everybody to contribute to it. You and your spouse or your housemates can share that note. Everybody has it on their iPhone or on their Macs. And you actually can see, just like in Google Docs, the text updating, it highlights, and you can collaborate on it together from different devices. That's pretty handy. Another nice notes feature, which actually is an El Capitan feature, but they did it like months after El Capitan was released. So it's one of those stealth features that I think a lot of people never heard of, is now you can lock notes. You can create private notes. So that's really handy, whether you want to keep your medicine list in a file or you want to have a secret diary or anything like that. You can lock now individual notes, which is handy. That's a handy little thing.
Yeah, very. And it's a great place to go. A great time to go someplace I wanted to go, and that is to something completely not fun, and that's security.
Security.
Any significant enhanced features here that folks need to be aware of, or that they can take advantage of in Sierra that you ran across?
In terms of security, there were not a lot of big things that I touched on. I think there might be things going on behind the scenes, but that are not highlighted in Sierra for users so much at this point. There are some system things that have changed. For instance, in El Capitan, Disk Utility lost its ability to, it lost all its RAID features. Well, it's redundant array of independent disks features, so you couldn't do RAID with Disk Utility as of El Capitan. Now that's back. Similarly geeky, the console app, which you can use to look at logs. So power users often use that to figure out what's going wrong with their Mac. That has been updated, so it's a little more user-friendly and easier to search and see what's happening in the logs. So that's one of the geekier new updates to the operating system.
That's a really nice feature, because sometimes finding those logs and interpreting them can be, a challenge if you don't do it often or don't know what you're doing. So, wow, that's what I'm going to go do tonight, is go look at console logs. Oh, wow. I do want to rewind back to one thing that you touched on, and you didn't mention it by name.
Sure.
Well, yes, you did, come to think of it. Flash and Safari.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of folks that seem to have the understanding that Flash now just absolutely does not run on Sierra. And that's, as I understand it, that's not quite true, is it?
No, it's not true. Actually, they've made it, I think, a little easier to use safely. So I'm supposed to say the take control line is really you should use Flash in Chrome, because Chrome always keeps it up to date so that it's going to have any kind of security updates are always going to be current. However, if you're using Safari, the new Safari, it disables proprietary plugins like Flash, Java, Silverlight, QuickTime by default, but it allows you to turn them on a site-by-site basis. So that's kind of handy, because the fact is some sites, like the Olympics live stream, for instance, are still in Flash. Like, it's the only choice you get. Like, we're not quite in a world yet where we can just turn our nose up at Flash altogether. But this means that if a site offers both Flash and an HTML5 version of a video, Safari is going to use the HTML5 version. But if it doesn't, you're going to be asked whether you want to use Flash for this site. And then even more granularly, do you want to use it every time you go to this site, or just this time? Like, you have an ability to flip the plugin on and then control exactly what's going to happen with it. And you can also go into Safari's preferences, and then you can see which sites do I have set up so that they're going to use Flash. And you can determine there, is it every time I go to this site, or was that a one-time thing? So I think it makes it a little easier to use it. Before, it was like kind of an all or nothing sort of thing. And now you can have the plugin, have it off by default, but then more easily turn it on in the places where you need it.
And that's good news. I mean, that's great news from two standpoints. First of all, that we still have the Flash option when we need it, when you really need it. But that it's protected quite a bit more. Because I know it's fascinating. There's some sites that you wonder. I mean, like the Olympics. Who was put in charge of that? Who's the technical advisor? Because we need to have a talk with him or her. That's not. That's old technology, and you get the impression that maybe somebody is not spending it on the new tech. With all the security issues around Flash and privacy issues and safety issues. Way past time. Way past time.
And these are, that's a big site. That's an important thing.
Oh, yeah.
So there still are a lot of examples like that where people are still using it.
Shelley, we don't want to cover the whole book here, and I'm not sure we could. I think we maybe touched on pieces of it. And of course, you take people through the steps of how to implement and use some of these things. You got a great joke list for
That's
Siri.
Right. Got some Siri jokes.
That's critical. How about I've specifically been asking Take Control authors about page count, because I think that speaks to how unintimidating these books are and yet how thorough they are. But page count, cost, the whole thing.
Okay. This book is a little longer than the other OS crash courses that we've done. It's 135 pages, and it is $15 this time.
So for $15 and 135 pages, you're going to become pretty much, you're going to know everything you really need to know about Sierra. You may not know everything, but you'll know everything you really need to know.
It's not every single feature and how, to use every single dialog box, but it is like, here are the most exciting and interesting things. And then the great thing about the crash course guides is it's really visual. There's a lot of visual elements so that you can dip in and out of chapters quickly to see what's interesting to you. You don't have to read it from front to back. You can dip in and out however you like.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the real benefits of the crash course format, that you can just jump into the topic you want. And usually you don't even have to necessarily find it in the index. You can just look in the table of contents and
look through. Yeah.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for all this. You taught me a few things that I didn't know about it.
All right. You're ready to go upgrade now, Chuck.
Yeah. If I can just get those mission critical apps upgraded, nothing would make me happier.
What are the ones that aren't updated for you that you're waiting for?
There are a couple plugins to Final Cut that are important, and the big one that's been getting a lot of press as we talk right now are some issues with the Fujitsu ScanSnap drivers. And so I definitely can't upgrade the iMac until that gets done. And some of the production stuff, maybe I can offload to another machine. Because I've at the very least I've planned this weekend to upgrade to Sierra on the MacBook because I got to start playing with some of the stuff. It's way too much fun.
Well, one thing that's cool, I don't know how new your MacBook is, but there are a ton of force click tips that I put in this book. The newer laptops and also the new Magic Trackpad now have a feature called Force Touch, where you push and then you push a little bit more. And so all through the book there are tips for using this, because you can actually use this to do all sorts of stuff. So you can look forward to that if you've got a newer laptop, of figuring that out. Like if there's a word and you want to know what its definition is, you force click it and the definition appears. Like you don't have to even go to a contextual menu and choose lookup or anything like that. You just push it. It's kind of cool. I'm
so glad you brought that up. Force Touch, I think with iOS 10 has become an even more important part of the OS, or of iOS.
Of the iOS.
And now that same thing is starting to happen in the macOS. And I'm learning. At first, it was just a cool little thing.
Yeah.
And I guess it was the developers needed to catch up. But now, you're finding, okay, we have a whole different way of dealing with certain things. Like you said, just push down a little bit harder for a definition, go deeper in. So, lots of new metaphors we have to work on.
Yeah, and things to think about too. Like you may know to push Option to see new things appear in your menus, but now you also have this other option, which is to try to force click things and see what will happen. There's all sorts of more hidden features in there, which is always fun.
Okay, so there's one more reason to go and get the book, folks.
That's right.
Is this list of force touches? Shall we? Let's not make it so long between times next time.
All right.
I'll get you on the Mac jury. I don't know what we'll be talking about, but it'll be something timely and fun.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Before we go, where can folks find you other than as the author of the Sierra Take Control Crash Course?
I think probably the best place to find me is on Twitter.
And you are?
And I believe I'm Scholle M, and that's SCHOLLE M.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the time. I look forward to our next conversation.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Folks, one more time. It is Sierra, a Take Control Crash Course by Scholle McFarland at TakeControlBooks.com. Go get it. Become a Sierra Zen Master. Or at least that's what I'm going to try to do. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.